This is Distraction Therapy, a podcast to explain how we get through the day. Keep calm and carry on.
Hello, it's Wednesday the 15th of April, and this is a distraction therapy podcast with me, Rob Watson, and I'm based in Leicester, and today I'm joined over the internet by Russell Todd in Cardiff and Leon Barton in Innsbruck in Austria. How are you both?
I'm well.
Good.
I'm okay, yeah, pretty good, actually. The weather's good here, and lucky to have a bit of a garden, so that helps.
So there's no emphatic, things are amazing. It's just you kind of coping. Is that fair to say? What's life like in Austria, Leon?
Yeah, it's been. We were on lockdown before the UK, about 8 days before, I think it was. Things were taken pretty seriously pretty early here, and it's resulted in the curve flattening quite significantly. So it means that this week, about 3 or 4 days ago, in fact, some restrictions have been lifted. So you are able now to go out for walks and bike rides and stuff like that, which wasn't really allowed before. It was pretty strict. People getting fined just for going out for a walk. You were only really allowed out to go to shopping and go to the pharmacy, stuff like that, or if you had to go to work. Sorry, one minute. My wife's interrupting me. What do you say?
You weren't fine for walking.
You were.
Only jogging. Jogging wasn't allowed, like sports.
People.
You were allowed to go for a walk.
But along the river, they closed it all off.
Yeah, you went in the confined areas.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Certain areas were closed off where more people were likely to gather. And slowly things are kind of being lifted. I don't know if you got all that from my wife. Sort of
and it's all staying in as well. We don't do any edits on this. So, it's group participation. So Russell, what's it like? What's it been like in Cardiff?
Well, it's funny because obviously Leon and I do a podcast about the Wales football team, and we're part of a collective of about 5 of us. We had a bit of a winter break, and we recorded 3 weeks ago, Leon, I think. And we were within that first 3 or 4 days. It was still a bit of a novelty. And Leon had said, "Look, it's really quite strict here." And I was a little bit taken aback because at that point, Rob, we were still within that. It's a lockdown, but it doesn't really feel like a lockdown because there's still quite a lot of freedom and privilege, relatively speaking. It's just. It almost felt like it's basically, you're not allowed to go to work, just have a few days off, glorified bank holidays. Because I still think, frankly, in the UK, most of us were still a little bit, dare I say, blasé about it all. And that surprised me because there was no talk of fines and all the rest of it at that point. So that's 3 weeks ago. So yeah, I think we're getting a bit more cabin fever about it now. Certainly our household has struggled a little bit today. I've got a wife who's a key worker in children's services in Newport, and she's back to work yesterday after the bank holiday weekend, albeit from home, and we found today hard, actually, this afternoon in particular. So yeah, if it's going to go on for another 3 to 4 weeks, as it might. I think France have extended it to the end of May. I think it's going to be a challenge for people. But I think saying that, though, Rob, I mean, the sobering thing with all of that is, we're just kind of arguing over, tablets, and you've spent long enough on FIFA on the PlayStation or whatever. Well, wife working in children's services is seeing it from a completely different perspective, which I'm kind of, like I said, it's quite sobering, where the mantra of staying at home is fine for us. She's got kids under her sort of corporate care, as it were, who, home is the last place for them. Home isn't a safe place for them, and so on. So that's been quite sobering for me, just to see close up what she's involved in.
Liam, what's described to as the kind of general kind of tenor of the mood of Innsbruck as a place, in terms of, is it relate this to that my experience here in Leicester is British pub culture, and it was Boris Johnson was every British person, by which he meant English persons, God-given right to go to the pub. We don't want to we don't want to kind of trample those rights. But is what's the culture like in terms of being directed through this process, and how does it fit, and did it jar with people? What were the kind of freedoms you've had to give up?
I think there was really an acceptance here that it had to be done, especially here in Tyrol. Here in Innsbruck, we're just a half-hour drive from Italy, half-hour drive from Germany to the north. So it is this, we know we're sort of connected to other places. I mean, Austria borders, I think, 6 other countries, and there's a particularly strong link with Italy here. There's a lot of Italians come to on day trips and stuff like that, and northern Italy was hit particularly hard. It's the first place in Europe to really be hit hard, and so there was like this feeling like, okay, to keep people safe, we've got to kind of follow the rules here and do what needs to be done, because we were seeing all this news footage coming in from Italy, and the hospitals there struggling to cope, and so I think, like I said, there's an acceptance that we needed to kind of to change and do whatever we could to kind of help things along and flatten the curve. That was the big message that sort of came out, and I do get the feeling that in Britain there's this sense, isn't it, that the kind of that sort of stretch of water kind of protects people, and it's like this sort of weird British exceptionalism that we can do what we want because we're British, and these things don't affect us like they do those aging Italians or whatever it was. The news reports were saying, well, Italy's got an older population. Well, I don't know. It sort of seems like at the moment the figures are saying that there are more mortalities in Britain than there ever were in Italy at its peak, actually, in Italy. Being sort of right in the middle of Europe and bordering a lot of countries, I think there's a sense that we are connected to everyone around us, and we've got to do what needs to be done. I mean, people do like to go out and socialise and drink, and the big thing is here is going out into the mountains, going out hiking, and then having a few drinks up in the mountain huts, stuff like that, which was obviously off limits. It still is off limits, and that's the thing that people miss, especially in the good weather. But like I said, it's accepted that this is how it has to be.
I think that connectedness you talk about, I think, is really telling. I think, certainly the last 4 years with all the Brexit stuff, and I suppose probably a couple of years running up to it, Europe has been portrayed as distant, undemocratic, unaccountable, over there, and we've tried to portray ourselves as this, proud island nation and all the rest of that nonsense. So not only do we feel disconnected from it, I think there has been that. I think two things, and I just referred to it now about being a little bit blasé about this. I don't think we had taken it seriously enough, soon enough, and then not that willingness to do what needs to be done, which I think is the phrase you use, Leon. I think that's a marked contrast, and I think there is honestly an element of that response here that is related to that broader relationship and relationship to and with and perception of the continent, Europe, EU, etc.
There's a kind of acceptance of interconnection, which is palpable, whereas actually the UK, I mean, with Heathrow, is probably more prone because of the number of direct flights into the UK. And the lack of apparent checking of who's getting off those flights at an early enough stage is actually, and the dispersal within. We don't have. Is there identity cards in Austria? Is that we don't have? The UK we famously resist having ID cards.
No.
No. Sorry. I suppose that what I'm wondering is, is this a kind of people's response? Is it defined by a sense of, if you like, inner self-control, or is it something that has to be imposed on people as an external social control, policing, that kind of thing? You say there's fines for people congregating. I mean, that's the same in the UK, public parks and beaches and things like that. And in the good weather, that's opening up, a kind of certain people attending and congregating in public areas. It's fine if you go for a walk through the empty streets or around a park, but where does is there a focus on, or a collective sense of a common kind of sense of self-control? Does the UK lack that, Russell? Is that, in Cardiff, has it been a challenge for the public authorities to lock things down, or is it kind of people going out and doing what they want to do anyway?
Well, I've not been in the city centre, so I've no idea what that's like. I live right opposite the park, and I'm on the committee of the Friends of that park, and I control the Twitter account for that. And we've had several tweets, messages through there saying, "Oh my God, how busy is this park? How big Haley Park? It's called. How busy is Haley Park? It's far too busy. Shouldn't people be social distancing?" And of course, the answer is yes. And we wouldn't ever encourage people not to. But then we're also proud, and I think this is where there is an inherent tension in all of this. We're also proud that the park is liked and used and respected, and it's great that actually people want to be in the park. And a park is actually one of the first spaces that they're going to go to get some sense of escape, relief. For one or two of those people who others think shouldn't be there or whatever, that might be somewhere they need to go to manage their anxiety, to manage their mental health, to get away from any certain domestic situations. So I think I have some sympathy with that desire to want to be out, even though it might on the surface be contravening that general mantra of staying at home. I think the thing I've been more alert to, looking at it from a Welsh perspective, is quite how many people have been coming in from east of the border to the second homes. And, when you see things like, the A55, the M4 towards West Wales being like a bank holiday towards the start of lockdown, that's worrying, because our infrastructure here isn't up to scratch for us who are resident. And this isn't any anti-English, anti-incomer point. it's a simple thing around infrastructure, and that was quite staggering. If we're talking about bank holiday levels of traffic pouring into places that are very rural, you have a problem over and above the infrastructure point. You just have a problem, the simple transmission point, and I think that then bears out another thing that I think is an issue. So not only are we in the UK, I think a little bit we want to portray ourselves as being detached and separate from the rest of Europe, with a significant global public health crisis as this is. That's clearly ridiculous. I think there's there's an ignorance and a bit of a tin ear to issues within these islands as well, and I think that's come out. And I think some of those tensions have been brought to the surface as well in parts of North and Mid and West Wales, which I'm not going to claim to be privy to, living in metropolitan Cardiff, but knowing people in some of those communities that I do, there's a genuine worry that the virus has been brought to some of these places. And when you look at the early cases, the stats, as much as we can, maybe as far as we can trust those parts of Wales had the lowest incident rate by quite some margin as well. But they're slowly climbing. That's a worry. That's a worry, and I think that taps into broader feelings that sense of entitlement. I have the wealth to escape this and get away, and I have the right to exert that financial power, if you like, and to hell with the consequences. I think that's quite a reflection of quite an individualised society. Robert Putnam, I shared with you, Rob, the Tortoise podcast. I don't know if you had a chance to listen to it yet. It's really, really good. But Robert Putnam on the Tortoise podcast is talking about, from an American perspective, admittedly, but he's talking about similar forces. And as he's talking, I'm thinking, yeah, I can sense that here within the UK as well. And it's not just Wales. I'm seeing reference to it in Cumbria, in Cornwall, places like that. And famously, obviously, the chief medical officer in Scotland was there. Got caught out
in the second term.
Yeah.
What's the property like in Innsbruck? Is it flats? Is it suburbs? What's it generally like?
In the city itself, it's mainly apartments. We're in an apartment block, but we're lucky to be on the ground floor, so we have a garden and been able to enjoy nice weather. There is a sort of communal garden area, but people haven't really been using that so much. They've been sort of going out on their balconies a lot. People tend to have balconies. And then it's out of the city really, where people have the big houses. Not many with big houses here with several with 2 floors or whatever. So it's apartments. So a lot of people spending a lot of time on their balconies at the moment in the nice weather.
And are these new apartments, or are they? You have to paint the picture. I know very little about Innsbruck. Is it traditional old town, or is it a mix?
It's a mix really. We're in our house was probably built in the 1970s, and I'd say that's kind of quite average here. And there's some older apartments around, a lot older ones as well. There's not so many newer buildings in the city centre. It's because the actual centre is very old. It's called the Old Town. That's what it's referred to as. And it's very beautiful. But it's usually just completely crowded with people, especially sort of holiday sort of times. It's very, very touristy, but I haven't been out into the Old Town for over 3 weeks now, so I have no idea what it's like. I'd imagine very quiet. I'd hope so. But parks are shut at the moment, so you can't go out to the parks. But I did go out for a pretty long bike ride with my 2-year-old son today. And that was really nice, and we got out to the edge of the city to a swimming lake there, and it was great. There was a few people milling around, and it feels kind of relaxed now, and it feels like we've done the hardest part perhaps, and now we're kind of like just slowly kind of things are loosening up a bit, and things will sort of just, if we take it easy, things will get back to normal soon enough.
So, what are the kind of things that have helped you through these last few weeks? Then, how have you been occupying your time? You're slightly ahead of where we are in the UK. What's lots of Netflix, reading, yoga. I don't know. What are people doing? I'm kind of doing none of that. I can't stare at the screen.
I do yoga, but my class has been cancelled, obviously. So I haven't actually done since lockdown. I haven't done any yoga really. But what else did you say? Netflix. I don't watch much Netflix. I did watch a bit of this Tiger King documentary. I don't know if you've seen that. But my wife tends to sort of take it, and she sort of watches more than me, and she's like gets further ahead watching series on Netflix than me. So I haven't watched too much Netflix, and yeah, a bit of reading, but I read quite a bit anyway. I've been doing a bit of writing, but I mean, I wrote a book a couple of years ago. I'm sort of slowly working on a screenplay, but I had left it for quite a while. I've just gone back to it this week, really, but it's not so much to do with the whole lockdown thing, because to be honest, I have two young sons, and obviously they can't go to school, or in the case of the older one, school, or in the case of the younger one, creche at the moment. So I have them at home 24/7. So I've not really been able to sort of get on with all this kind of writing whatever King Lear or whatever it was Shakespeare did when he was in lockdown because of the plague. I don't know. So it's been about sort of my sons really making sure that they're all right and they're occupied, and we've kind of having fun. We sort of made a helicopter out of a cardboard box today, just stuff like that, and just making sure that they're entertained and they're sort of stimulated, and the older one's doing his schoolwork, and to kind of oversee that. But yeah, I've been trying to sort of maintain some sort of routine with all that, and do a bit of exercise in the morning. We were doing that quite a bit, and then it's been Easter, so it's sort of that's broken up the routine a bit because we've not been doing the schoolwork. But we're trying to get back to that now this week, and do some morning exercises together. That really helps, and then to keep in touch with friends and family back in the UK. And I've talked to my parents a bit more since this happened. I mean, my dad's 71. Mum's 66, so I kind of sort of worry about them, but they're doing well, and it's actually been nice that I felt more motivated to give them a call and to talk to them, because I probably don't do that enough really, and so that's from one point of view it's actually quite nice, and just like sent a few postcards out last week, and I think Russ got one, just to say, hey, how you doing? And yeah, stuff like that. It's nice just to keep to stay connected with friends and family.
Now I'm imagining in the Todd household it's wall-to-wall replays of 1970s football matches. Would that be the case?
Yeah.
Come on, kids, we're watching Cardiff City against whoever, at this point, Leeds.
Yeah. Wales against Yugoslavia getting rocked by a bent East German ref in 76 again?
Yeah, 76.
Yeah. You give me an idea for tomorrow, actually, Rob. No, I'm not too dissimilar. I mean, my kids are a bit older, 6, 9 and 12. we've tried to park some of the schoolwork, obviously because of the Easter break. So it's not been set by the teachers because obviously they're having some time off. But lockdown started before, what term is still on. My kids all in Welsh medium as well, so my wife speaks a little bit of Welsh, a huge amount, so Hillel can sort of help my youngest, but certainly my eldest in the first year of secondary school. He's got stuff around science and German and all the rest of that, and that's a little bit beyond their level, so that's kind of fallen on me to just understand what they've got to do as a task, which I don't mind. I think it has opened a lot of parents' eyes. Actually, I think it was a broader dividend, if you like, from all of this. It opened people's eyes into the learning kind of process and the curriculum and that kind of thing, which I think is a good thing. If people feel a bit more connected to the school, but it's, we're just living a little bit on top of each other. It's a small house with 5 of us here, and also me trying to ensure that my wife gets the space she needs to get the work done. Like I said, in children's services, some of the conversations she's had on the phone, they're not really suitable for the young ears that we've got in the house. So we've had to try to create some space in order for her to get some stuff done. And that's not been easy, to be perfectly honest, and it feels a bit of a first world problem and a middle class problem, but it is what it is. But we've also tried to factor in quite a bit of downtime as well, and just to be kind of creative with some of the learning stuff as well. I went through all the West Kitchen, and we were covering in the wardrobe, and we were looking at sort of art, design, history, language. I tried to sort of squeeze as much as I possibly could in across the curriculum, just into 20 minutes worth of going through the football shirts. But it's just little things like that. And we like we were saying off air a bit earlier, Rob, I mean, they're in school for whatever it is, 6-7 hours a day. They're not intensively learning for that length of time. I think parents have just got to give themselves a fighting chance to last the day. If you can get 2 hours of decent learning done in a day, then you've done well. And we've, like Leon was saying, we just try to get into that sort of routine, and we'll try and build that up again. But I've done similar to that. I've done writing, whether it's on football. Managed to bag the lead article in a periodical called Planet, the Welsh Internationalist, which I'm really proud about, which is drawing on this whole period of time, but drawing on lessons from other social and public health crises, not on this scale, admittedly. So we've gone back to a heat wave in Chicago in 1995, where not being connected to your neighbours, to the neighbours that you know, the neighbours you don't know, certainly to friends and family, was an aggravating factor in mortality, significantly. And I think what's interesting is that we're being told to stay at home, socially distanced, but that's not the same as isolating yourself socially. What can we do to ensure that there isn't an aggravated, excess mortality rate? And I think it's highlighting that, again, if there is a dividend more broadly, it's highlighting that the value of what I would call, and others sort of more in sort of sociological terms called social infrastructure, those places where people meet, they interact. Not just public spaces. There tends to be an assumption that these are public spaces, whether they're indoors, outdoors, parks, libraries, etc., community centres. But it is local coffee shops. It's the huts and mountains that Leon was talking about, where people go to interact and meet people who they don't know, and meet people who aren't like them. That's really, really important. And I sense, and as you know, Rob, we've got this sort of social enterprise. I think we're going to work with that, or we've had the downtime to just sort of thrash out sort of strategic vision stuff around being a little bit more, alert to and cognizant of social capital and these things that we do value, and actually strip away the white noise and busyness and the commute and all of the, that kind of drive to keep moving and doing and being productive and everything else. When all of that is enforced on us to have to stop, actually what matters is social reaction, social relations, social interactions. Exactly what Leon said there. It's going for bike rides with your 2-year-old, it's speaking more to your parents and so on. And I think if there is a dividend to all this, another one, then I think it's that recognition and that reminder that these things are important and they give us meaning, and I think they there's a humanity about them as well. And I think if that's not too grand a way of putting it, I think that's important.
Leon, is there anything that you're doing now which you think you're going to carry on kind of after this? You know, there's a danger, isn't there, that there's a kind of fear, you know, that FOMO, fear of missing out, is that we should all be on Zoom with our extended families. I think the other week it was my mum's birthday, and me and my sisters got together on Skype, and we kind of had an impromptu party with her as much as we could, but we haven't done anything since. Yeah, we're not that kind of family. We don't really keep, we don't need to check in with each other every day, that kind of stuff. We send messages on WhatsApp now, but is there a danger that you're expected to suddenly keep in contact with a load of extended friends and family and colleagues, when in actual fact a lot of people are quite private? And what will you take from this that you'd like to carry on, and what do you think, well, actually, I really don't want to be doing this after it's all over?
No, not at all for me. It's been in terms of like keeping in touch with friends and family. It's been good for me personally, because I'm not as good at keeping in touch with people as I should be. Sort of, have a bit of a reputation, I would say, probably amongst my friends for sort of going missing for long periods, and I shouldn't really. It's something I feel sort of bad about. I should sort of take more care to maintain sort of like friendships, and I should speak to my parents and my sister and my brother a bit more often. And I have been doing that, and I'd like to think that I'll carry on doing that, because in my parents' case, they're not getting any younger. They're still reasonably healthy. My dad, especially, for 71, he's a young 71. But no, there's no, it's not in terms of like feeling pressure, like you have to do this. I kind of tend to ignore all that stuff. I don't really watch the news very much, and I don't kind of even, to be honest, I love listening to Six Music via the internet, but I've started struggling with it recently because of the news bulletins every hour. I hate the news. I hate it. It just sort of, it's not the news as far as I'm concerned. It's just like being told what you should be concerned about every hour, and it's not what I'm concerned about. And I don't know if this is making any sense to you, but
no, absolutely. And the follow up question I'm going to jump in is what are you concerned about? Because I think that's there's information overload is one of the big fears. I do some work with community radio stations in Leicester, and one of the stations has organised a system whereby the police and the ambulance service and the health service can phone in, key personnel, the chief constable can phone in a message, and it gets played out every half an hour. But they've said, we don't want it to be wall-to-wall information, because you can get that on the mainstream news channels. What we want is just a reassuring voice that drops in every now and again. The news is going to do what the news does, but those other communications, so you can overload people with stuff. So, is that, what's your tip then for, just ignore it? Is that a good thing to do? I don't know, because I don't watch TV news. I haven't seen TV news in ages. I've no interest.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've probably watched 3 or 4 times with my wife the Tyrolean news, the local news, since this whole thing sort of kicked off, really, to do with sort of information about like what we should be doing, and knowing exactly what the rules are. That's important. But like I mean, this is a bigger thing than just to do with what's been happening with coronavirus. But I've kind of really felt for a long time, and sort of having been outside the UK for a decade now, that UK news, I put it, news in inverted commas, is really just sort of state propaganda, and it's just so sort of blindingly obvious when I go back and I just watch a bit. If I'm staying with my parents, it's just like this kind of like that we should care more about the royal family than other people because I don't know, for some reason they're more important. And he was doing this whole thing, I get a sense of it from Twitter that, like that Boris Johnson is more important than doctors working, these crazy shifts on the NHS. And that's what the lead news seems to be. The health of this guy who I don't even know if I wouldn't put it past him that the whole thing with him having coronavirus was just completely made up as a distraction.
You're not a conspiracy theorist, are you? I think that's been going round of late. It's
well, I just don't trust. I just don't trust the guy. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I'm not saying it was definitely made up as a distraction so for sympathy or whatever. But he's a pathological liar. I do not trust anything that comes out of that guy's mouth. So in terms of that, like, and we, people being told that. What is it? I don't know. There was some ridiculous article the other day that like the health of Boris Johnson is important because it represents the health of the nation. Well, I don't know. Tell that to all the families of the nearly 1,000 people a day who are dying in the UK. It's just nonsense.
But you've lived in Austria now for 10 years.
Yeah.
And you're still tuning into the BBC, and you sound probably more informed than I am.
I know I don't tune. No, I don't tune into it. I purposely don't. I don't even visit the BBC website anymore. I follow.
It just seeps into your consciousness somehow.
What it is I spend too long on Twitter, and so I see the links. I see what people are posting, and I see what. Is being talked about.
And is the danger that gives us a distorted view? Because I'm sitting here looking at I've got my tweet deck open, and there's like 6 feeds, 7, 8 feeds, whatever it is. I've got a couple of websites open. I've got news sites open. Just sitting here watching them click away. But if I put my head out the door, there's nothing going on. The streets are very quiet. Most people are acting very sensibly. Is it gonna? Is the danger that we get sucked into some kind of kind of social media bubble where we suddenly get all of these anxieties about who we can trust and who we can't trust kind of comes to the fore. It activates, a complex, an anxiety, a collective anxiety, and we don't feel we can trust anybody. That we're alert to being lied to. In Cardiff, Russell? What's the kind of what's the connection that you guys? Because not getting out, but then having your wife being part of a professional social service, does that change the way that you think about this?
Yeah, so she's access to information as part of the whole sort of contingency, strategic, emergency planning dimensions. So those are different things. I'm not privy to share any of that, but they're looking at things around, okay, when do schools go back? Do they go back at all? Until September, and all that kind of stuff. And I can't help but overhear some of that stuff and be privy to that. And that's interesting because you've seen it from that different dimension. My background is community work and community development, as you know, Rob, and I put a call out, and I'm hoping there's an opportunity for you and I to collaborate on this at some stage. You're seeing this huge state apparatus moving, which is fascinating in and of itself in the UK, where you've got this, really quite right-wing, disaster capitalist type sort of government prides itself on small state, rolling back the state under the auspices, under the euphemism of austerity, etc. And suddenly now, considering nationalisation, supply chains, and all this sort of stuff, which is interesting. You've got a huge state apparatus moving. At an individual level, you've got us all, adapting, taking up new hobbies, doing more baking, tidying the spare room. I tidied the shed, which I'm, been meaning to do for a couple of years, etc. All of those sorts of things. But actually, where's the collective, communal community, neighbourhood, streets, whichever kind of level of scale you want to, is suitable and relevant to yourself. Where's that kind of happening? And so with my community development podcast, I wouldn't mind probing some of that. I saw today a development trust based in the west of Cardiff in Ely, disadvantaged community. They're called ACE, the development trust, are going out and delivering food parcels in lieu of the food banks that they host, and the food sort of share donations that they get, the sort of leftover food, the unsold food, and as distinct from the food bank. And they're still wanting to make sure that people are getting the meals that they need, which is great, and that's one aspect of that. But I'm wondering whether, playing devil's advocate a little bit, whether people are unsure of what else they can do beyond liking stuff on Facebook or chucking a £5 or a tenner to a mutual aid crowdfunding. And so I'm interested, if people are talking, you hear this on Twitter, and this is the bit that I think isn't helpful, a lot of talk about, we're not going to go back to normal. This is a game changer, this is an epoch changer, all that kind of talk. You see a lot of that. I just don't think it's inevitable. I don't think it just happens. I think you have to work for those changes. So from my point of view, if we're looking at radical action, collective organising, community organising, variations on all of those terms, should we be organising now in order to make those changes happen, for there to be a new normal? What do we need to see happen? And I'm not persuaded yet within my sort of orbit that people are doing that. I think there's still a lot of trying to mitigate what is going to have quite significant damaging effects on people and communities and families. And that's fine. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you park that and you'll start navel gazing around collective action further down the line. You have to do what needs to be done, but to what extent can we carve out other spaces for debate and discussion via podcasts? You talking about it being that deliberative media on your decentered podcast, your decentered media podcast. To what extent is that happening? I wouldn't mind probing some of that, because I think it's at that scalar level, isn't it, between the individual and the state? What else is happening?
Leon, you said you're using Twitter. Are you using any other forms of social media? I mean, I've gone back onto Facebook because of that's where the mutual aid groups have sprung up in the UK, and there's one in Leicester. And it drills down into the ward levels, the local neighbourhood levels. Whereas, for me, it's like I gave up on Facebook a few years ago and kind of deleted my account. To have to go back feels a bit like going to a town that you grew up in many years ago and had not been back to, and you go back and you realise it's full of crazy people. But has there been a kind of, is there a network that you're part of kind of mutual support within Innsbruck? Is it different than maybe what we're experiencing here in the UK?
I'm not part of anything that wide in that respect. It's like without kind of meaning to, I kind of fell in with the sort of other British people of a similar age who live here when I moved over here, just through sort of going to work in the same bars, or going to the same places to watch football and going to the same gigs and stuff like that. It wasn't like I went out here and was like, okay, well, great, where are the other British people? It's just we sort of gravitate towards each other, and we've got a WhatsApp group, and we're just sort of WhatsApping there and seeing how everyone's doing, everyone's coping, and sort of giving each other some support that way, mainly by sort of taking the piss out of each other. But it's that rather than anything wider than that, really, and sort of just sort of, like I said before, friends and family, and charity begins at home and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's kind of
it sounds like. I mean, Russell mentioned Robert Putnam earlier in the podcast he was referring to. He talked about bridging and bonding capital, and it sounds like you're quite embedded in what would be the bonding capital, small, close networks of people that you've got a lot of trust with, that you've got a lot of cultural identification with, you share a sense of humour with, a sense of, phlegmatic British stoicism with, that kind of perhaps, or is it? Forgive me. Is it? Well, you're originally from Wales.
Yeah, from Wrexham.
Cool.
Area,
so you're not far away from me, being from Liverpool. So it's kind of quite kind of close in that respect. But it's but what's called for and what's absent. One of the things that Putnam was talking about is that there's very little bridging capital between people from different social classes and social experiences. So you've got very rich people. There was that news story that was reported last week about the multimillionaires, billionaires, wherever it is, flying to the south of France with helicopters waiting for them, and they got turned back. And their feet never touch the ground that anybody else works. They don't experience the schools and the hospitals that the rest of us live in. But the captains of industry and the finance giants are wandering about Europe in private jets and helicopters, and they don't have to experience what it's like to sit in to sit in a small flat on the edge of a town with no social contacts. Sorry, I was kind of soapboxing.
No, it's interesting because Innsbruck. So you mentioned before Heathrow. Like the airport in Innsbruck is actually kind of in the city. It's quite unusual for an airport to be so close to the city centre, and so you just have aeroplanes usually flying over every 5 minutes. Out in the garden, you just see these whooshes of planes going past. So it's actually been really nice to not have aeroplanes flying over our heads every 5 minutes, and not just passenger jets, of which there are a lot because it's a tourist destination, but also like private jets, and particularly Russians own houses and ski chalets and stuff like that in Tyrol. So you get, I think Roman Abramovich, Chelsea chairman, has got a property somewhere nearby, and so you see these kind of private jets flying over, but not at the moment actually. So that's actually quite nice.
So let me ask you the question then: both of you, what music have you been listening to? So Leon, you mentioned Six Music, still in touch with a kind of British music scene.
I haven't for a while, but I used to listen to it.
So what kind of music are you listening to that comes out of Austrian pop culture or alternative music culture? So I sound terrible saying it like that. I don't know. I couldn't think of the right words to say it then. But what is it? What's getting you through the week in terms of, are you going back over your classic prog rock albums from the 70s? Are you into, what is it that you kind of
let me just wait a minute. Just wait a second. I'll just pull out my son just pulls out records from my record shelves. I'll just see what he's pulled out, because that's what we tend to listen to, whatever he grabs.
It's like a random generator for songs. What's coming up next? I don't know. There's a 2-year-old going to rummage amongst the albums.
I just grabbed the ones that are on top of the speaker, which I just like, where I've taken them out of his hands before he does too much damage. I've got Edwyn Collins there, who I've met a couple of times. Someone called Frazee Ford. I don't know if you know her, but we listen to that when he's trying to get to sleep at night. It's very nice. She's Canadian, I think. Really cool. Christine and the Queens. Don't know if you know her. Mm-hmm. Been listening to Fleetwood Mac, Rumours.
Okay, I've gone off you now. I think we reached the point. I detest Fleetwood Mac.
Really?
Yeah.
Or Fleetwood Mac. What about the Peter Green early stuff, the blues stuff?
Well, you know what? When somebody says it's like when you watch a series on Netflix, like Game of Thrones. Everybody says, "Oh, the first series. You've got to get through to the second series." That's what Fleetwood Mac's like for me. There's no point in waiting for the second series. It just doesn't do it for me.
Really? I grew up with them a bit because my mum was a fan. So, yeah, I love Fleetwood Mac. Yeah. No, and Rumours is it's a classic. No,
So-
it's my wife's favourite album.
Russell, what are you
Go on,
forcing your kids to listen to that they will be scarred with in future years?
I find myself having to screen it for the language because obviously my wife's very disapproving of that. And I dropped a massive. I was going to swear then. No, I made a massive mistake of Faith More B-side, live B-side this morning actually, which I didn't realise was quite sweary as it is. I tend to listen to. Well, it's probably. I mean, I share a lot of similar taste in terms of bands and styles. It's quite broad, but I do tend to find to get kind of going in the morning and try to get my head into like a work sort of space. I need something a bit loud and a bit aggressive and shouty. So it'd be a lot of sort of punk and hardcore or metal. But I mean, like more broadly across the piece, I found myself going back to stuff. I'm not really using this time to explore new things. I'm going back and just trying to remind myself why I like certain things so much in the past. Because I usually find, certainly with films, I very rarely, I look at DVDs on the shelf. I'll go, and I'm a massive horror fan, and I look and I go, I'd love to watch that again, but if I've got a window to watch like an hour and a half, 2 hour film of a weekday evening, or I just think I've got to make the most of trying to find something new. I can't. I find it hard to justify going back to watch something old. I've actually found myself, even though I've probably arguably got more time, going back now. Not new stuff. It's going back, and that's very much the same with the music. So we've gone back to a lot of like 80s sort of thrash and early 90s thrash and like the Black Flag, Minor Threat type stuff, and it just kind of gets me in the mood. And then after lunch, I tend to kind of calm down a bit with a bit of Gorky's. I had a big Neil Young day last week. Just sort of went through about 6 or 7 albums of his in a row. But yeah, I've got to kind of screen out a lot of it because I can't wear it with headphones. I've got to kind of be alert to what the kids ask about help with schoolwork, or they're fighting and they're about to murder one another because my wife's working. So it's going back at trying out the safe stuff, I suppose, rather than going finding the new stuff, which is kind of interesting because it's kind of made me remind myself why I fell in love with maybe certain directors or certain bands. And I'm not finding I'm reading a huge amount. Leon said he's reading. I'm not really getting very far with books at all, actually, because I just get interrupted far too much with the kids, to be perfectly honest. That's the frustrating bit.
Leon,
so I watched a load of early 90s, early 2000s French and Spanish horror, which is very niche. Yeah, but I love stuff like The Orphanage and Switchblade Romance. Some of those I absolutely adore, and I've been meaning to watch for ages, and I've done that and sort of reminded myself why I loved them first time around.
I'm struggling to watch stuff on Netflix. I kind of lose interest after about it's full of zombie movies and horror films, and neither of them are really to my taste. And I'm kind of left wondering what my taste is at the moment, really. So, Leon, do you do a program on a community radio station?
Yeah.
Does that involve music? What kind of?
Yeah, it's a music show.
Okay,
Yeah.
What kind of stuff goes down well with what you play on that? Everything that you've got good taste about, obviously.
Well, yeah, obviously. It's very much a show that we do. I do it with my friend Dave. He's from Coventry area. North Coventry and then Northampton. And whoever else wants to come along, basically, and it tends to be all of us British immigrants. Whoever's free can come along and just join us to do the show and join in. And we do it to amuse ourselves, mainly because, frankly, hardly anyone listens to it. But that's cool because we just, it's a chance to go and sort of, definitely see each other once a month and socialise and have a few beers. And we have a lot of fun doing it. We play. The last show was a good one. A friend of ours called Izzy came along, another Brit, living here. She's a professional sound engineer, so she has some good stories, and she plays in about 7 different bands as well. And so we played some of the stuff that she's been working on, which is great. And then the show before that, it was actually on the day before Brexit happened, so it was like the very end of January. There were 7 of us, and we did 7 Brits. We did a European special. We just played bands from the continent, and that was good. It was sort of a sort of love letter to Europe, really, because we were, I think, pretty much all inclined to stay in the EU. All of us who did that show.
What kind of bands did you put on that? Was it?
We played some. Oh, I'm trying to think. We played some British bands, and so let's think. The Doves. We played some Irish bands. We played Thin Lizzy, and then we played some German bands. We played Kraftwerk, a band called Wir sind Helden, an Austrian artist called Mavi Phoenix. Played some French stuff, Daft Punk, Christine and the Queens. Played some stuff from Sweden, some Sugar Cubes from Iceland. Trying to think what else we played now.
Quite an eclectic mix then.
Yeah. So we sort of travelled the continent. It was like I say, it was like a sort of love letter to Europe, and that was a lot of fun to do that show. It was kind of it's not a political show; it's a music show, but we sort of enjoy using the music that we play to sort of maybe make a point about something that's happening in politics at the time. For instance, when the whole Windrush scandal was going on and people were being sent back to the Caribbean, we sort of did a sort of feature where we played several sort of Black British artists together, people of sort of West Indian descent, to say, look at how these people have sort of enriched our culture, and we need to celebrate them rather than treat them like shit, like the government has been. So I think we played Tricky and Dub War and Steel Pulse, people like that.
My rather feeble attempt to get some attention on Twitter a few weeks ago was trying to get Morrissey Every Day's Like Sunday trending. I don't think anybody noticed, but it was a song that rattled through my head for a few weeks. And then more latterly, I suppose, the specials, with Ghost Town. Certainly if there is a slump and a recession, it's are we going to be back to playing that kind of disenfranchised music? Russell, what's the kind of, is there anything coming up in Cardiff that kind of encapsulates musically? Do you have your finger, you've got kids, you don't have your finger on the pulse anymore, do you?
Yeah. I said we go back to 80s thrash, and people say I've never had it on the pulse, but I had a mate up in Wrexham, actually, as it happens, who's a big fan of a rock band from the northeast of England called the Wild Hearts, who I've always been deeply in love with. And he said, have you seen the Tramshed announcement? And I hadn't. So I googled it immediately. Tramshed's a newish venue in a listed old Cardiff bus depot. It's a lovely venue, actually. And in the Riverside district of Cardiff, not far from the city centre, and I checked it out. And they're doing a fundraiser for the Hurgood, but it's sort of towards the end of September. My first thought was, that seems a bit optimistic. I have found myself, then of course then you think, actually optimistic, actually that's really quite depressing, that we might still not be back to going to bands and seeing bands and gigs, even by the mid to end September. It's just little goals, small goals. I just see myself, bands that were playing, I know somewhere like Bristol or Gloucester, which is about the limit for me of a weekday evening to get to to see a band. Certainly Cardiff, I just find myself looking at things in October, November, and that's just a little thing to aim for. It's those little targets, I guess, that you just sort of tick the days off on the calendar, so to speak, and and that'll be a nice thing to get back to normal to do. So British Sea Power, a band I actually adore. They played Gloucester towards the end of October. Bought tickets the other day. Me and a mate, big fan. And it's those things.
Suspect that maybe the big venues, the big festivals won't go ahead this year at all, but there might be an opportunity for smaller, kind of impromptu, music happenings. Is there going to be like a resurgence of warehouses and raves in in fields and bands suddenly setting up in the street?
Well, I was having this conversation with a lad in the street. I'd be for a walk at lunchtime. We're walking back, and he's not long graduated. He's moved back home, and he's basically living there on his own because him and his brother, because his mum teaches out in Saudi, so he's there, he's out in the garden reading, listening to a bit of music. And I was having a catch up with him, and we were talking about music, and he's shot videos for bands, kind of very DIY scene in Bristol, where he was a student. And we were talking about this. He was saying he's still got tickets for Green Man, which is mid-August, I think.
Yeah.
And in Monmouthshire near Crickhowell. And I sort of I can't be going ahead. He sort of said, well, I think we're waiting for them to have it cancelled, rather than them to cancel it. They're going to wait for kind of government advice, etc. And I guess that's all to do with insurance or whatever. It was our first time he was going to go, actually, which is a shame. I'm a big fan of Green Man. But him and I were saying this. We think people will be so desperate to just go and see live music again, and maybe consume all sorts of other forms of culture and entertainment. But there could be some really interesting things going on, and some interesting spaces that it's happening in as well. And again, maybe that's something to look forward to. I mean, I keep talking about a dividend. I mean, at the risk it sounds crass, I don't mean it to. Because I think, as Leon was saying, 1,000 people dying a day is horrific. But I think you do have to try to look forward to things, and I think some of those are the things that matter to me and give my life meaning, then, if you like. And I think it's it's those little, like I said, those little goals, really.
Leon, in terms of Innsbruck, in terms of kind of cafes and bars, music scene, what do you think that'll be like as it kind of creeps back up into people being able to get out and go to those kind of things?
Yeah, I think when it happens, people will be really ready for it, and it should be it would be really nice. I think it'll be just really people are be desperate to get out and really socialise properly again. And there's it's quite a small city, so it's not a huge amount going on. A couple of the better venues have unfortunately shut down in the past couple of years. So I don't get these days, especially not since my second son was born, to get to too many gigs, which is a real shame. But I've been sort of thinking a lot about going to a festival again, and it's been a few years since I last went to a festival, and we've sort of talked about taking the boys when they're a bit older, and been sort of found myself sort of daydreaming about that, actually, and maybe something like Green Man going there in a year or two's time, when our youngest is out of nappies. Should be easier. So yeah, kind of, I sort of, that's one of the things I sort of miss about Britain, really, is the music scene is, it's much livelier. There's there's a lot going on. There's a lot more venues, even in smaller cities, and a lot more festivals. That's for sure. So we weren't going to go back to the UK this summer anyway. We went a couple of times last summer. So this whole thing hasn't sort of changed our plans in that respect. We were just going to stay here this year, but I think it'll sort of perhaps make us more determined to go in 2021. And funnily enough, I used to play in a band. I used to play drums, and a friend of mine who played in a two-piece band with, I've been having some conversations with recently about the possibility of us reforming, getting the band back together. It's easier when there's only two of you, at least. And Yeah, and we'd sort of made some very loose inquiries about doing a small festival in Mid Wales this summer that we played at in 2006. I think it was our second ever gig, and they seemed to be okay with that, and we were going to explore that possibility a bit further, but now obviously had to knock on the head. I don't think it's officially been cancelled yet, but I think it's only a matter of time before pretty much everything gets cancelled this summer, I would say. I really can't see it being wise to have mass gatherings this summer, full stop, really. So probably next summer.
We're going to have to be a little bit more creative about how we do this and go about it, and fitting it in with social distance and rules. So rather than having 15,000 people in front of one stage, you've got 3,000, 300 people spread out. But the gig can still go on. And we can put it all on Zoom.
Well, that's it. I mean, we watched a bit of an internet, a Facebook sort of concert that someone my wife knows. I forgot his name though. I watched it last night. He did this live thing, and there's people have been doing that, which is nice, which is really nice. And I think that's just that's the sort of thing we're going to have to enjoy and say, well, this is as good as it gets at the moment, and we'll really party hard when we're allowed to.
Yeah, there's a lot of kind of virtual pub quizzes at the moment and things like that going on. Yeah. So maybe we'll never, kind of when it's all over, we might not want to go back to much of this. We might be quite happy to be sitting around. We've gone over the hour, so I'm going to say thank you to Russell Todd in Cardiff and Leon Barton in Innsbruck in Austria. If anybody wants to get in contact with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Get in contact with me.
Are you on Twitter or anything like that?
Yeah, sure. If people want to, it's Leon C. Barton is my Twitter handle. Find me there. Yeah.
Russell,
that'd be great.
On Twitter.
You've got about 10 Twitter accounts, haven't you? So.
Well, I have, but the main it's Llanach, which is LLANNERCH, which is Welsh for small enclosure.
Cool.
Which is a random word to adopt, but yeah.
Yeah, well, that's what it's kind of. Yeah, it's kind of what's the word I'm looking for? It's synergistic to the space that we're in at the moment. Small enclosures. I think maybe a good name for a band. It was
the name of a house I was living in a little mining village just to the west of Wrexham. About the turn of the 20th century. So Ross Llanachrigog, really really long name. Llanach means there's no house, and it was in those early days of the internet and message boards, and I couldn't think of anything, and I didn't want to use my name, so I just adopted the name of the house, and it's sort of stuck really ever since.
Well, very prophetic. So this has been a which podcast is this? I haven't learned to say the name of the podcast yet. This is the Distraction Therapy podcast with me, Rob Watson. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at RobWMedia, and the website is robwatsonmedia.net. So get in touch if you want to take part and waste some time. So thanks very much, guys.
This is Distraction Therapy, a podcast to explain how we get through the day. Keep calm and carry on.